This tiny little camera is the Sony RX0 Mark II. It shoots in 4K with a 24mm equivalent fixed lens. It has a little flip-up screen here, which is perfect for taking photos of yourself or vlogging, and it has a microphone jack so you can get a little bit better audio. But at $700, is this thing worth it versus something like a GoPro or a DJI action cam? I don't know, we'll see. I asked Sony to let me borrow this camera to test it for a little bit because I thought it'd actually work really good on a SwitchPod if you're looking to take photos when you're traveling or you're filming yourself and vlogging. Thought it'd be a nice little combo to enable you to do that because it has that tripod screw right into the bottom of the camera. And then if you want to get even more professional audio, it does have a microphone jack, but there's not really a cold shoe to attach a standard kind of shotgun mic onto the camera. So you're gonna have to either put a rig or a cage on this. Maybe your tripod has screws on it. You can attach the microphone that way. So just because it has a microphone jack doesn't mean it's gonna be easy to get that better sound quality. But here's a test of what the internal mic sounds like on the RX0 Mark II. So here's a test of the built-in microphones on the Sony RX0 Mark II. Now, it's definitely not going to sound as good as the microphone that I use in my studio, and I do have some soundproofing in here, so if you take this out into an external environment with cars driving around and things like that, it's going to pick up way more background noise. But for the two little microphones that are just kind of perched in the front of this camera, it's not bad. And despite being super small, this camera does pack a lot of the features that bigger Sony cameras have. It has eye autofocus when you're taking a picture. When you're taking a selfie, it'll find your face and it'll actually choose an eye. In the menus, you can even choose which eye, your left or your right, that it goes after, which I think is pretty crazy. It does have S-Log, so a flatter picture profile if you do want to do more color grading or you're trying to match some other Sony cameras. It can shoot in 4K up to 30 frames per second at 100 megabits per second. You're going to need a pretty fast micro SD card though, something in the U3 category. It also can shoot 120 frames per second in 1080p and do some of those more extreme slow motion frame rates like 240, 480, or 960. Now, as you go to 480 and 960, quality's not going to be good. It's going to be really pixelated, a lot of moire and aliasing and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't go above the 120, but having something like that in a camera this size is great. Even though this thing is not a touch screen here on the back, the 6 buttons they have to allow you to navigate are pretty easy to use. You basically have 4 arrows and then a menu and a select button. You can even custom set 2 of them to do what you want to do in either photo or video mode. So if there's a setting you end up wanting to get to all the time, you can go ahead and customize those buttons to do that. To change between different modes, you're going to be pressing this left arrow here. You also have your function menu you can pop up, the display, which will change kind of how much information is on your screen or if it's fairly clean. And then you have your playback or your footage or photos you've taken that you can then go and look through as well. So you can do the standard things with this. It does take some practice to get used to it, but I think for a screen this size, I think it's actually better than having a touch screen and trying to swipe through menus and things when sometimes you just want a hard button to use. There are a few major annoyances for me or limitations to this camera, I would say. Number one, when you are filming, you do have that locked single point autofocus. So let's say you were going to do a little selfie video, you want to lock focus on you, hit record, and then you want to show something else. That other thing is not going to be really in focus because the camera is not going to continuously be changing the focus distance. So just keep that in mind when you're filming with this, that it will lock focus for the entirety of the clip that you're filming. The next thing is if you are filming kind of in selfie mode, and I think it does this so that it doesn't overheat and the battery is saved, but if you're recording for more than about a minute or so, the screen goes black. So you can't see what it's filming. So you can kind of set your framing and know kind of roughly what it's doing. But if you're recording beyond that 1 minute mark, the screen goes black. You don't know what it is you're filming anymore. It's kind of hard to know that it even is filming, that sort of thing. So that's kind of frustrating too. While there is that built-in microphone jack, there's nowhere to mount a microphone. So you're gonna have to rig this out somehow into more of a setup to get better audio, to maybe charge it with a battery pack. Maybe you want a bigger display through the HDMI port. It has some of the functionalities that you can kind of expand this and have it be a bigger setup, but part of the draw of this thing is how small it is. So I kind of wish they would have had, this side here is blank if there was a way to add a cold shoe there. I don't know, I might jerry rig something to enable you to put a microphone right on the side there. That would be something I might do, just duct tape or Velcro or something to the bottom of the cold shoe so that the microphone's actually attached to the unit instead of having to rig this out and make it bigger, because the point of this thing is that it's so small and compact. One more annoying thing is just that there's no in-body stabilization on this. So if you're used to the steady shots that you're getting now with GoPro 6s and 7s and the DJI Osmo and things like that, the stabilization in here, the steady shot is what they call it in the menus, it's electronic. It's not the actual sensor moving around. It's software trying to predict what's happening. So even when you're holding this out at arm's length or on a tripod or SwitchPod or whatever, GorillaPod, had this out, you'll still see kind of these little micro jitters. So it's not the most stable camera out there. If you really need something that's stable or you're doing extreme action and the camera's gonna be going all over the place, you're probably gonna wanna look at a different camera. If you do pick up this camera, I'd highly recommend you also get their little tripod that goes with it. I think this thing's about $100, but it attaches right on the bottom really easily. And then you can plug the USB plug into the camera. And then you have a photo button, a movie button, and zoom. I would never use the zoom, but it enables you to not have to reach up and touch the camera. It kind of sits right where your thumb is, those buttons. And then it flips out into a tripod. If I can do it, just like that. It's pretty cool. I think it's about $100, but I would get that just to go along with this. Makes it kind of a kit that's really easy to hold and use. So should you buy this camera? If you're going to be doing a lot of action, kind of things with heavy movement or shaking cameras or things like that, I don't think this is the camera for you. You're going to be wanting something that has a more stabilized camera sensor in this size, something like a GoPro or the DJI Osmo Action. So I wouldn't get this if that's the kind of thing you want to do. It is waterproof, so if you are jumping into a pool or something like that, it's usable. It's just not going to be good for mountain biking and all that kind of stuff that there's a lot of shake in the camera. If you already own something like a Sony RX100, which is just a little bit bigger than this, or a Canon G7X or something that's kind of a point and shoot that has a flip up screen, this isn't going to be giving you much more because it has the same 1-inch sensor. It has some limitations like no continuous autofocus. It is going to be smaller, and it might be adding a mic jack, so if audio quality is really important to you, you might want to consider it. But at this price point, if you don't care so much about the size of the camera, there are other cameras that give you more abilities to do things, like the RX100 from Sony or Canon G7X series. To me, this is a very, very niche camera. If you want something extremely small to vlog with, to travel with, to take selfies with, to do some slow motion from time to time, maybe do a time lapse here and there. If you really want something that's this small, this camera is great for that. If you want a camera that's going to be able to do more and you have more control over and you don't have to fidget with the little buttons, I would go for something a little bit more complex. That being said, this is a great little camera. It's just exciting to see companies trying new things, trying new form factors, and kind of enabling creators and people to document their lives in ways that we haven't been able to before with tools that are this small and this high quality. Special thanks to Sony for sending this out for me to check out for a little bit. I'll be sending it back today, actually. And if you haven't seen my video where I talk about rigging a GoPro with a microphone, putting it on a SwitchPod, you can watch that video right here. It's probably applicable to you if you're looking at this camera. So I've been Caleb Wojcik. Thanks so much for checking out this video, and I'll see you in another one. Cheers.